you would find that instead of leaving it to the individual point of view of an administrating officer or an individual point of view of a policy maker or a judge, at least the written law would get practiced in a manner that the application of such law results in industry being competitive. Whereas, if that is not a part of the legislation, we are left to deal with the situation of individual points of view. So one thing I would say is just make amendment in the tax law to provide that if there is a admitted ambiguity in reading a provision, such ambiguity should be resolved in a manner that gives the industry a competitiveness rather than in a manner that results in an outcome that the administrator otherwise is seeking to do.
One important thing which I must share with you, see the statements government is giving it. Government is committed in terms of taxes concerned to see the pain points actually, whether it's litigation, whether it is dispute resolution, whether it is giving incentive to the low salaried people. I think there's more clarity, there's more commitment, and I believe you see changes, tangible changes coming. In this relief that the government is going to review the Income Tax Act, and they will be reviewing it in a, not a new law will come, but substantially reduced, clarificatory, balanced. We will see a good changes coming up, which will be a very welcome document, which is the feeling that we are getting it from the media, a little bit with interacting with the government. Rajiv, I want to come to you. I know you have to leave early actually, your flight. And you being a National Council for the Insurance, I have 2 points basically. One on insurance FDI. Second, you mentioned, somebody mentioned before your session was the penetration of insurance still have been very limited in India basically. And the third is highly regulated also. So I want to hear your whole ecosystem of insurance, the way it works, challenges, and let me ask you one thing. What is your ask from the government if we have to make a petition to the government? What you expect the insurance sector should come from?
Thank you so much. I think one of the
the
biggest asks was obviously the FDI, and we are hoping the FDI should happen. The 100% FDI and insurance. Given the size of the country, as I mentioned in my previous session, it is important to have capital. And if we have to expand to the rural markets of this country, we need money. So more players will certainly bring that money which is required, for the expansion, and that will indirectly, help us or directly help us to improve penetration. Second, I think technology transfer. With more players coming in, we are certainly going to get advanced technologies which will support our, dream of getting bigger. And the more the competition, if FDI brings more competition, I think local players will certainly enhance their service standards. So if today health claims are getting settled in a particular way, I'm sure we're all waiting for a day where health claims are, a natural process of your hospitalization. So you go to the hospital, you walk out without waiting for the TPA to clear your bills, or without waiting for the hospital to, coordinate between the insurer and the TPA. I think technology should help us a seamless way of processing things, for sure. The other biggest ask which the industry has been, working with the government very, very closely is to give tax incentives, particularly, the GST on the health insurance. There's something, again, a topic of discussion today. And we are hoping that at some point of time, the necessity of insurance, having health insurance for all by 2047, will kind of force the government, or will at least ensure the government comes up with reducing GST from 18% to probably a smaller number. I think today we are hearing that is the first step of giving this relief to probably low premium policies. But eventually, I think health is a necessity. Health insurance is a necessity. It cannot be treated as a luxury item. Third area, I think, while we are all talking about low penetration on the health insurance side, the biggest concern today is the healthcare ecosystem in this country. So while I can push everybody to buy insurance, but if there is no good local healthcare facility in the country, in your neighborhood, there is no question of buying insurance. If you buy insurance, where will you go for treatment? And we at PB FinTech have just, I think you must have heard in the press yesterday, we've got approval to start, PB Health, where we'll be setting up 1,000 hospitals across the country. I mean, that's a separate business altogether, and that's the next big problem we want to resolve, in this country. And I think many more such initiatives are important, and API will certainly help us to, go there.
I just want to add a very interesting thing when you talk about insurance sector basically. See the opportunity it offers you. See the number of people who are today who are seeking insurance. Like I tell you, like I have 1,500 people working in office. We have an office policy. We pay people for 1,500 people. See the awareness that is taking. It is becoming a need. I personally believe is a very trust sector, very deep down required sector. Government must open it out. It needs more capital, basically. It needs less regulatory intervention is there. So I believe insurance sector is a deep sector to go forward. The government must, I'm sure, is aware of it. You'll find more relaxation coming in that regulation part of the sun, and it offers a lot of opportunity for the growth.
So just to quickly add one more point, I think the key factor here is insurance is never bought, it's sold. People don't wake up the next day morning to say, I want to buy insurance, right? I mean, unfortunately, people don't realize why insurance is important. So creating that reach and the distribution of talking about insurance in every nook and corner of the country is important. Agents alone will not be able to do it. Bank branches alone will not be able to do it. Distributors like Policy Bazaar will not be able to do it. I think somewhere, every diagnostic center, every small hospital, civil in every village, every pharmaceutical shop, so wherever people come, because you remember during COVID times, suddenly there was a spike in people coming to buy health insurance because there was a concern that they have to pay out of pocket, So if everybody can start talking about insurance and there is the interest, a small, uncomplicated product can be sold even by a pharmaceutical shop in a village. So I think that's key, that's very important.
Something like PASA policy. Like who said how many policies are being bought on a daily basis? I don't have the numbers, nevertheless.
The Paisa Bazaar is our company. That's an online lending platform.
Sorry, you all got everything last time on this time. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm coming from education. I want to go to Dr. Kanan. He's the chairperson, SHAM, on a digital health task force, and he's from Gangaram Hospital. Very relevant from insurance to the hospital side. Doctor, I have two questions from you. Do you believe the allocation of the government on the health side is sufficient actually? We don't believe, we see the number of doctors per patient basically is immensely high in India, which shows it is not very well covered. What do you believe, what do you expect from the government, what do you seek from the government, what do you want in the budget in beyond any taxes or the concern, what do you want and how do you see this sector going forward actually, and what have been the changes that has come in the sector?
See, Sunangia, right at the outset, I must confess that I'm a surgeon by profession, I'm not an economist, so I don't understand economy as well as all of you do. But I have some complaints. Since morning I have been listening to technical experts, economists, people like Mr. Singh, the economic advisor, but not one slide on healthcare. We are talking about a Viksit Bharat at 100. We are talking about a 45 trillion economy. But what are we going to do with a huge population which is unhealthy? The communicable and the non-communicable diseases are rising. I can say that today we are not proud with the outcomes of the healthcare. We are still not a healthy nation. We are a young nation, but if this young nation is burdened with hypertension, with diabetes, it becomes a non-productive population. More than half of your economic GDP will be spent on making them healthy again. So let us, my humble submission to all of you, and I say it in all SHM forums, is please let us focus on healthcare. What was the biggest dampener of this whole century? The last century, I think the biggest dampener was COVID. When COVID came, all of us were paralyzed. Nobody was talking about economy anymore. We were talking about death, and all of us saw death from very close quarters. So please let us start focusing on healthcare. So with this as my prelude, I would like to raise a few red flags which I think have happened in the last 3 decades. See, our Indian healthcare was designed like a pyramid with a strong base of primary healthcare and the tip being the tertiary healthcare. What has happened in the last 3 decades, I have seen it happening, is that the pyramid has got reversed. So today in the A-class cities like Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, we have boards of tertiary care health centers We have big corporate hospitals providing quality healthcare to anybody who can afford it. But the primary health centers are no longer existing in villages. So that urban and rural divide of healthcare has increased a lot. So there is inequality of resources, and our dream of providing universal healthcare has gone berserk. I don't think we are giving universal healthcare to all the citizens of India. So I think, first of all, the government has to spend more in the healthcare sector in terms of percentage of the spending of the GDP that they are doing. That's what I understand. And secondly, we have to use, I think, the technology fruits have not reached healthcare. So we have to use technology to bridge that divide between rural and urban India. So if there's anything which has changed in our nation and made us more prosper, I think that was digitalization. And digitalization changed everything. And the same digitalization and same technology we can use to bridge the urban and rural divide, using virtual clinics, creating a healthcare network, bringing down the cost. As you rightly said, and I share this thought process that, our healthcare is depending on private and public sector. 30% public sector, 70% private sector. Private sector is becoming more and more unaffordable. How do we overcome it? Simplest solution is insurance. How are we incentivizing insurance? We are not. We are putting 18% tax GST on healthcare insurance, same as we would put on a luxury car. I mean, we have lost our focus. Are we trying to encourage our healthcare? No, sir. I think healthcare is the last priority that we have today.
On the same thing, I need to ask one question to everyone. Two things which bother me. Sorry, I can talk a lot on this subject. What was the lesson we learned from COVID? Did we forget everything? I said, did we have really transformed what happened? Supply of oxygen. Every person in the country was affected directly or indirectly. There was not a single person who would not have been affected indirectly. Still, we have forgotten everything. The biggest challenge in the world which happened. And we don't talk about it. Have we taken remedial action? What happens? Something happens again. Are we geared up infrastructure-wise? I do not know. I think, Doctor, you can answer this also. Have we really gone as a back burner?
No, when we were involved, everybody was talking about good health. Everybody was talking about prevention. But 6 months down the line, we have forgotten. And let me tell you that healthcare is also a lot of economy. I mean, it gives you, it's like, an export-oriented unit. I mean, medical tourism, it can be really bringing a lot of FDI to India. So many institutions are investing into the hospitals. They are bringing FDI to India. And sir, I think one of the biggest job generators is the healthcare industry. I mean, from healthcare workers to technicians to doctors to nurses. It makes economic sense also to invest into the healthcare sector.
I'm putting a question, it's an open question, I'm not taking it right now. Tell me one thing, we are not shortage of money, we are a 4 trillion economy. Why we are not able to invest in this sector so much? Which touches the life of everybody, which touches the productivity, which gives a family, see the death that takes place, preventable thing, quality education, medical colleges. Why we have not been able to invest? But money ki to kami hai nahi with a 4 trillion economy. Is it a lack of willingness? Is it a lack of awareness? I do not know. I do not know. But I feel this sector needs more pumping of money, and it will take long time to see a transformation taking place. I think we have more. That was very good. Thank you so much. Now we had insurance, we had health here, and now we have an education. We have on the education divide actually. First is this: we have the same problem in education in terms of funding is concerned, illiteracy is concerned in the country, the investment required in the country. Without education, you cannot move to the next level is concerned. What you believe the government should do? What should be your ask of the government, not in terms of monetary relief? What should be make a buzzword? We are able to educate every man, woman, rural areas, including urban areas, and make them employable, productively employed.
Yeah, thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank Sanjay and the team at Associate for this very meaningful and fruitful session for today. However, it is very hectic. And thank you, Professor, also for a wonderful enlightening session. When we look at the education actually, and I'm happy that today since morning we are talking education skills more than economy. Right from the minister to the chief economic advisor, everybody was talking about economy. We have to understand one thing, first education, then skills, then industry, then economy. And this is what way it has to go in the country. But what happened that we started talking about economy, industry, then we are looking for skills, and then for education. So it has to be reverse completely. And if you ask me that what is expected from the government in the budget, so it reminds me कि हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले और बहुत निकले मेरे अरमां फिर भी कम निकले. In every budget there are so much education sector expects from the government. I was talking to my colleagues in the council. As I chair, so definitely it is my responsibility to talk to all stakeholders. And I asked them to send me some of the points, what they expect. Just for the record purpose, I will quickly read it. There are 11 points, and after that I will try to answer your question. Very briefly I will be. The very first thing is that budgetary allocation in education has to be enhanced. What it means that strategic investment in infrastructure has to be. And which is very important in emerging areas when we talk about AI, ML, OT, agri-tech, and whatnot, investments have to come. We cannot depend on the universities, institutions to look into it. I'm not a man of finance, but tax reforms when we talk about, GST has been raised. Definitely GST on educational services and many other sectors, it had been an issue every time, which needs to be discussed, which need to be seen. Educational loans when we talk about, they need to be reviewed, and especially when we send our kids outside the country, which is very important for exposure and experience purpose, the TCS has been introduced, levied, which need to be reviewed again, primary and secondary education infrastructural development, because when we look at the rural areas especially, infrastructure is lacking there. And we have to understand that the skilled labor, skilled youth will come out of rural areas more than anywhere else. That has to be worked. There are research grants which have to be seen, global partnership should be incentivized, green certification we talk about, sustainability we talk about, but there are no incentives for that, efforts which need to be seen. Digital skill infrastructure has to be developed, so many things were there. But when I look at your question now, like it was just for the record purpose, I wanted to mention all these things over here. I know time is very less. But when we look at what has to be done, actually, since morning we were talking about skills, labor, and all other things. One, we have to create awareness. Secondly, I always believe that the relationship between education, educational institutions, universities, and industry is very inorganic in nature. It's not organic. We do not go hand by hand. We come to each other when it is needed. We do not look into when we say that, okay, skills have to be developed, but nobody comes and tells that what skills are required. We have to work very closely indeed. Every day we have to look into the possibilities, how we can work together. And if we will start working in that way, scenario will change. We have to understand, as I mentioned in my first sentence, first education, then skills, then industry, then economy. This has to be the priority of this nation. Then the change will come. And I'm sure that that change will come, and we all are sitting here discussing since morning, and it will happen soon.
Thank you. Yes.
So I just wanted to let everyone know that the Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jayashankar, will be reaching between 1:10 to 1:15. So I want to request Mr. Nagar to please wrap up the discussion by then, because I know the pre-budget wish list was pretty long, but we're going to have to rein in the discussion till about 1:10. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the interruption.
I just want to add, the idea is not to cut short the discussion. Yeah, no, I think we need to arrange the thing again. So maybe 1:10 we can break up. But more than that, whatever we don't do today, we will complete it later because we need the pre-budget list before next week's meetings. So this is important. So please do continue. But I thought we just give you a heads up. It is not 1:30, but it is 1:15, so that you know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Coming to you, Said, you are into the NBFC sector, basically. And NBFC sector is a bridge actually between the organized sector to the mile connectivity, with a rural presence, with a fast presence, with the digitization basically taking place, and actually giving the money to some person in funding the person in rural areas. And actually, I call it the last mile connectivity in terms of funding is concerned. I also believe you are highly regulated, right? And you have a regulator always with you, you have a lot of reportings to be done, you are monitored, you are audited. First, since you play such an important role as a what do you expect from the government actually so that this sector which gives last mile connectivity funding basically it reaches to a new height because you need money to be provided to the rural area. What do you expect from the government as not tax wise, generally wise basically?
No, thank you, Rakuji. I think first of all, thank you very much for providing this platform to put our point of view. I represent, I'm a co-chair of NBFC and Infrastructure Finance, and I'm the CEO from Muthoot. I just want to say from an NBFC perspective, like you rightly said, we are the last mile connector for the funding that is required for MSME, small and rural households. So NBFC as a sector plays an important role, and I think in presentations this morning we have seen a couple of times Professor Charan Singh pointed out that biggest need for MSME is affordable finance and also timely finance for them. So I think that is there, which is absolutely needed. You rightly pointed out that cost of compliance is also increasing day by day. I think considering that we need to take affordable finance to the last mile, and NBFC usually work in an area where typically banks do not fund. So we take a slightly more risk as compared to banks. Because more evolved customer, more credit tested customer go to the bank for financing, but mostly I think the 4 crore SMEs which are registered in India and 6 crore unregistered micro MSME and lot of entrepreneurs, their first access to finance is through NBFCs. So in that context, there are 3-4 suggestions that we would like to present to the government. One is to take the affordable financing. There should be a refinancing facility available to NBFC sector. I think we have a refinancing facility for housing finance company where NHB refinance them and there is affordable finance available. I think if the similar kind of facility is available to the NBFC sector as a whole, I think that will really help us to take the credit at affordable rate. The second aspect is like there is a priority sector requirement that government has for banks. 40% of their lending has to be priority sector. The banks achieve that priority sector lending, some part by direct credit, some part by lending to NBFCs who are in turn lending to the priority sector. However, that priority sector funding which comes to the bank to NBFC does not come at a priority sector rate. It comes at a commercial rate. So I think one intervention that is required from the government that the lending which is done from banks to NBFC for the priority sector product should be at a priority sector rate. I think that is one thing. The third thing which is more important from having a unified or maybe a level playing field. Today, as the regulation stands and the Supreme Court rule stands, Aadhaar is not accessible by NBFCs, it is accessible by banks. So to understand or do a KYC and also to ensure that there is no overlending and correct identification of the customer, the access of Aadhaar should be extended for underwriting for NBFCs as well. So these are the three things. One thing which in the last budget came out was a credit guarantee, but how it has to be implemented, that is something we have seen that usually the credit guarantee is given to the bank on behalf of a defaulter and NBFC, which does not really encourage NBFC to take more risk in a sense that going to the last mile of the customer, but it really only protects the bank from NBFC default. What we need is a credit guarantee scheme at the bottom where the borrower's borrowing is guaranteed so that the NBFC can freely extend them credit. And if there is a guarantee, then of course the provision cost will go down and we can offer affordable loans to the borrower. So I think these are my suggestions.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Sita, to you, sir, basically. Now, you are a member of SHM Trade and Investment Council. Like, in terms of ease of doing business, we have been talking again and again, and ease of doing business, we believe a lot of things have happened. Do you still believe a lot of things are yet to be done? Do you have something on your wish list? Do you believe your members have represented to you? We must seek something more ease from the government in terms of doing business with ease is concerned. Is it truly you find ease also?
Sorry, it's working. I'll have a few points on the budget and then to this ease of doing business also. Number one is in 2000, if I remember correct, budget and the Vajpayee government, a policy was introduced whereby the customs duty rates were aligned or were to be aligned with the ASEAN levels of customs duty. And it continued. We didn't align it on one day. It continued for 3-4 years and then it continued thereafter. But off and on, some practical issues arose, and therefore the duties were once again increased. Now we are nowhere near the issue. With the result, when after COVID, in the past 2 years, there is a lot of talk about China plus one or alternative to China and things like that. Asian countries is like such as Vietnam and other countries, they are able to make use of it. But India could not make use of it to that extent because our duty rates are high. Now, my suggestion would be that can we align our customs duty rates on various products to that of Asian levels so that Indian industry becomes export competitive and our exports grow. This is number one. The second is the environmentally conscious countries like European Union. They are going to come out with the CBAM. It's already been there, but the tax will be, they will start levying it from maybe 1126 or 1125, whatever that is. Now, if India has to face that kind of a challenge in a country, which based on its own assessment of environment and its own conditions, forces every other country to meet their levels of pollution and things like that. Probably in the budget, we should introduce something called bilateral, country-specific export duties. But if apart from the basic customs duties, if any country is trying to impose duties like CBAM measure, then India would also impose a corresponding or equivalent, export duty on that product that is exported to only that country, so that the government of India gets the money, and this will be available as a credit in European Union calculations of CBAM, so that there is no burden on additional burden on the European Union importer. So the money comes to India, and we are still at the same level insofar as the export prices and things like that are concerned. And government of India can use it
for the purposes of financing the pollution control measures, etc. And so it could be our own funding process, and this could also be continued if any other country follows the European model. This is something which we have to introduce into the system. It may be introduced as a tax whenever it requires, but we can introduce a system like that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, sir. Rahul, I'm asking you a non-tax question. We just heard a statement from US actually that will be 100% tariff being imposed to the 3 countries sort of thing. Is Indian economy, and India is there in those 3 countries, resilient to that extent? Do we think government will take some preemptive steps like that, and what can really be done? It's not a small thing, it's extremely, from trade point of view, trade barrier point of view, the reciprocal effect, the global effect, if it is implemented, or should it be a passing sweeping statement, we wait and watch?
I think particularly on this announcement, the External Affairs Minister has already clarified that India is not in that category where this 100% tariff should be imposed, because we are not the sponsor of an alternate currency. So, timing it appears that there is a safe zone, but on an overall basis, whether India's trade relationship with the partners is such where we can use some of these things as a lever, that depends on how critical the export is, it depends on what is the volume, that also depends what's the relationship with the other importers and what's the other suppliers doing in that country, which is a matter of debate. As Theraman also said, that virtually CBAM is an unilateral action, right? And if CBAM unilateral action needs to be responded, and what he's suggesting that the Indian industry therefore pays export duty locally, which gets credited against the CBAM levy in Europe, and when it gets credited, there is an overall burden that does come to the industry even if an export duty is levied, and if that export duty is subsequently remitted in some manner, then I suspect that the qualification for getting credit may not apply. So those are the kind of things where India too has its own levers for economy, based on the fact that it is a large demand country, large consumption country. The CA also mentioned that our consumption story of 60% of the GDP is continuing. So I think that from some of those things you could play out and press into service some levers, but on this 100% tariff, I think the clarification from the External Affairs Minister is a good idea. Yes.
So Dr. Mr. Rajiv Gupta, last question to you. One wish list for the budget for the government, the number one criteria you have for the sector.
I think clearly, in my view, spoke about wish list already in terms of what we require, different kind of tax incentives. But the bigger wish list is this country is going to grow rapidly, right? From 4 million to 30 million, a trillion is not going to be an easy task. So somewhere the partnership or the understanding between the regulators and the industry, is very, very crucial. So regular dialogues between regulators and and the industry will become more and more crucial. While we have prescriptive regulations today, in my opinion, it should be more market-driven regulations which protect consumer interest, which protect data privacy, but at the same time gives enough room for innovation, gives enough room for this sector to expand and grow in that level.
Thank you. Dr. Kalan, a parting statement, one wish list which is most important for your sector and which you expect we should go to the government for that.
See, I am also heading the chair for Digital Healthcare Task Force, National Task Force. And I think there is one solution which is going to address both the healthcare and the education sector, and that is that we create digital networks. We have a simple solution which we are offering you, that you in smaller centers, you just optical fibers are already laid down. You create a digital network, and that network can be used both for education as well as healthcare. You see, we can use that if we have a small center in a small village where probably the optical fiber is there and a smart TV is there. We can use that not only to impart uh, quality education, because we can tell bigger centers like cities are DPS or other Kendriya Vidyalaya to properly transmit the same education which is they're imparting to their child here into the smaller centers. We can use that space for imparting primary care like immunization, hand hygiene, menstrual hygiene, so many other government programs through that. And that same thing we can use to create a healthcare network. If you have a small center, primary health center, can be hooked to a tertiary care center, and we have to use our strength. The strength of our country is digitization, and let us use the advantage of technology to bridge this gap between rural and urban India. Because that is the only way. If you ask me as an expert to go down to a small village in Assam to take a class, I will not be able to do. But if you tell me that 20 minutes on your smartphone you interact and probably as an expert sort out this, so that is what the government needs to do. We have to address the problem of universal healthcare by unifying rural and urban India.
Thank you so much. Just for the audience, I would like to share a few statistics. India is the second largest steel producer in the world. India is the fourth largest automobile manufacturer in the world. India FDI in last 20 years have crossed $1 trillion. India economy has been the fastest growing economy in 23-24, which was 8%. India renewable energy leadership was the fourth largest in the world in terms of installed renewable energy. Our foreign exchange reserves were close to $700 billion actually. Digital payment leader with 185 billion transactions in 23-24. Talking of taking to UPI into another 50 countries, UPI going global. Defense importer has become India exporter of defense. India dependence on defense. India today is manufacturing everything from submarines to frigates to war planes to board ships. Everything will be manufactured in India. Complete transformation in defense manufacturing taking place in India. Foxconn has come to invest in India and Tamil Nadu. Sweden Stock has 100% ownership manufacturing facility in India. US chip manufacturing limited has tied up with Reliance and Tata Group. And Tesla has signed deal with Tata Electronics. Blackstone has invested in healthcare of $1 billion. Canadian pension fund cumulatively have invested $80 billion in India. Micron Semicon plant in Gujarat to start in 2025. So what I'm just trying to say, what a transformation that has taken place.
So can you give some statistics on the healthcare sector?
So I said to you initially.
I mean, we are now the diabetic capital of the world. Fastest rising hypertension, highest incidence of coronary artery disease. So, I mean, please include those statistics also.
I started with a question with you. I just said this to him. I just say, even on the education, the same thing actually. And I said, we are exactly the same. India was always a poor country, sir. India was always a poor country. There has been a massive change, but I still believe the money which is not flowing as required in health and education.
So
I always say
these
that.
countries which have become very good and, I mean, take the example of the Scandinavian countries. They just focus on the two pillars of strength for any nation: quality education and good health. And look what they are now. They are developing fast. The happiness index is very good. The quality of life is very good. So please, all of you, please focus on healthcare also. Absolutely, sir. I think that is the most brilliant thing which has happened in the last decade.
You're touching the life of every citizen.
Economic survey says that in the last 5 years, 2,500 crores of rupees have been saved by people spending out of their pocket because of the Ayushman Bharat scheme. So that is, I think, the biggest contribution the government has made. But the pace at which it is happening is not that much, sir. We have to, I mean, the acceptability of Ayushman Bharat, especially in bigger cities, they don't accept because the cost of treatment is so low. I mean, the fund the government is providing for giving tertiary care in Ayushman Bharat is very petty amount. I mean, you have to give some tax stops to people who are this on life-saving equipment. So I think it's not that nothing is being done. Providing Ayushman Bharat coverage to above 70 years of age is a very big step, sir. Because with an aging population without insurance support, the elderly people are going to be in a mess.
So today the median age in India is 29 years. And what will happen after 30 years, 40 years? You'll find it will take a different turn. So you need to be prepared for that also, which you see is globally, where the health quality standard improves, where quality of the, everything quality-wise changes. You find the median age going up higher. That will be a trend.
And we don't have a social security scheme, sir. I mean, people who pay taxes for 50, 60 years, when they retire, there's nothing we can give them back.
So I always, my wish list for the government is always has been on medical and education, which I believe, and my first statement was that it's not the money we don't have it. It's not the government doesn't have money. When you're spending a $4 trillion economy, it's not a big money actually. I don't know where it's stuck up. I'm not the right person to answer this question, but somewhere there's a go slow. I do not know what is the reason behind that. I can't say answer. But let me, I still like to, before we close this discussion, India over 100 billion annually has been spent in infrastructure in the past 3 years. 54,000 kilometers of national highway were built in last 10 years. National infrastructure pipeline completing 1.4 trillion. We never knew what was billion, now we talk about trillion actually. There's a complete change in figures is concerned. I just see one airport is added every month in India. One airport every month. You see the figure for next 10 years projection. Just trying to share with you this part. So,
can I make
yes,
one
yes,
small
of course, there's a free form.
on the healthcare and you were mentioning about 18% GST on insurance premium paid, especially healthcare insurance premium. I don't know the tax implication that much. Can that insure GST if it cannot be brought down? Can it be allowed as a deductible expenditure in the hands of the payee, in the hands of the person who paid the premium?
So you can give it a wish list and then you can add it there in the budget.
It may help actually because 18%
Yes,
will come down to say at least 12% will automatically.
No, I think it is the comprehensive, like Dr. Sudhir mentioned. Providing insurance is only one part of the solution. Providing good healthcare facilities across tier 2, tier 3 cities, access to good infrastructure, access to the best of doctors. One and all, because today what is happening is everybody rushes to a Fortis or a Max or an XYZ hospital because they have access to that. The middle class doesn't have access to that. So you are tackling multiple problems together. Availability of skilled manpower, requirement of good hospitals and infrastructure, and insurance penetration. At the end of the day, all these are very crucial. They have to work hand in hand if we have to do something in this country.
I'm just going to add again, maybe I missed it. Did you all discuss any other wish list on tax rationalization? That's one. And second, what about GST? The absolute number of 18. I mean, after 43% income tax and 18% GST, how does it sound to you?
So the Happiness government has echoed that we are going to reduce the number of scales we have of GST is concerned. The median tax rate is likely to be announced, but it is something the council has to decide ultimately after it crosses the
No, I think in our wish list as Association, should we put forth this because consumption is the one that is suffering. If you take 43% income tax, 18% GST on everything, we're left with literally 30 paisa, right? So if you need to give a secular bump in consumption, this may be the right time because the fiscal situation is far better than it used to be. And by collecting so much GST, it's not like, and we don't want the government to keep spending on their balance sheet, right? You need to bring in the private sector. The way you bring in the private sector is that they put more capex when they see secular consumption is higher and their capacity utilization is higher. They're not yet seeing that. I think one thing we should really think about, and you should all debate in your council, is should we make a strong recommendation for GST cut and then, of course, ladder upwards because premium and sin tax and all that.
So certainly, Sanjay, I think there is need for rationalization as far as GST is concerned. I think as association, probably different industries we represent, we have to come together and put a wish list. But at the end of the day, everybody wants reduction. Will also impact the tax collection for a government. We'll have to look at what can be rationalized today vis-a-vis what it is today. So 18% is, as you rightly said, a very big number. So can we look at reducing this over a period of time so that we have one number of GST instead of having 12, 5, 18, can we look at 0 or one number, one decent number which can help the industry to grow, which can help consumers to save more money and have more money for spending.
My worry is listening to the CA as well, like you said. Unless the big corporates take the burden of giving more wages and employing full-time people, where will you get the consumption piece from? You don't need a cyclical impetus, you need a secular one. The only way to do a secular one is to get many people in more money in people's hands. So until the corporates begin to really see a future where they want to employ more people, give higher wages, yes, that will take another 3, 4, 5 years because they're all focused on valuations like somebody said earlier. So I think we're in a bit of a bind there.
That's been said, consumption story goes on.
So, but the point, Sanjay, also is from the government side that the taxes that they collect, that ultimately goes to the government spend, and the government spend gets to the pockets of the people as profit, which should kickstart the economy. Leaving the people, a person who pays 43% tax, reducing his tax bracket by 10%, would it increase the consumption? As against collecting that tax for 10% tax and giving it to create a canal in a village, would that put more money in the hands of more pocket to increase more consumption? No, that's a dilemma. And one has to make choices.
No, I think that they have spent a lot of money on physical infra, which is very, very good. We needed that post-COVID so that you don't have any supply shortages, right? But he quoted Adam Smith, so did I. Adam Smith also said consumption is the only solution to production. So point is we've got to think about a consumption stimulus now, but one that sustains. And then when people have more money, maybe we can tax them at that time. But right now we're overtaxed, according to me at least.
And so please mention that so much capex is being spent on roads, on airports. Some of that capex should be spent on creating healthcare infrastructure also. In Delhi city, how many government hospitals have come up? In the last 30 years, how many government hospitals have come up? Same.
No, you're right.
So, I mean, healthcare also is going to kickstart the economy, sir. It's not that it's something which is a wasteful expenditure. Apart from giving you good health, and it is going to create job opportunities, sir. And you have so many FDI now coming into healthcare sector. Give it an export-oriented unit status, sir, and see how many people rush into your country.
Dr. Sudhir, I can give you the numbers. PB Fintech, in partnership with investors, is investing $1 billion in the next 5 years, only setting up hospitals. That's the first step we are taking. And there are many more people.
Again in metro cities, sir.
No, sir, tier 2, tier 3. I mentioned 100-bedded hospitals in tier 2, tier 3 cities, not in the
Sir, I would just end on one note that medicine can never be commerce, sir. Medicine cannot be pure commerce ever. So that is why, we need to have. It cannot be pure commerce. Never make medicine pure commerce.
I'm not an expert on healthcare, but I can tell you, like TB has taken initiative, NBFCs have also taken initiative. So we all during COVID used something like a practical to consult the doctor. So we have created that kind of facility at our branches, which are absolutely rural branches, where primary healthcare is given to the rural customer, really bottom of the pyramid. They can come to the branch and we can facilitate a consultation of those customers with the doctor, and they can give a prescription to them, and even generic drugs are given free. So that kind of initiative has the point that I'm trying to make. I think definitely your request to the government to allocate more budget is there, but I think it has to be private-public partnership which will take the
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Please give a round of applause. Thought-provoking discussion. Please keep your suggestions coming in for legit discussions. Like Sanjay sir said, these are important and we must bring them out. I believe instead of spending on healthcare, we should just get preventive healthcare and not take any medicines only. The CEA said that please move away from cereals to say vegetables. If we eat more vegetables rather than the rice and roti, perhaps we'll be healthier. We'll have more water, less pesticides. So instead of spending on medicine, let's spend on ourselves. Spend more on vegetables and be healthy.
No money in preventive healthcare, that is why nobody wants to.
That is the thing, sir. अपनी health अपने हाथ में. I request everybody to
I'm
please
from
take
the
it.
FO school.
I
Did my schooling first. We were in Bombay.
What's
Father used to
your
play-
number? Can you write? Yeah. For external affairs.